How do you know what your values are? I'm kind of hesitant to do this one because I don't feel like I've thought it through enough. So we're going to see how this goes. This is really one of those where I just pressed record and I'm going to see if this actually makes any kind of cohesive sense enough to make a YouTube video. I've recently started reading the book Traction for like the 10th time. If you haven't heard of it, it's about something called an entrepreneurial operating system, EOS. It's a whole thing. There's a huge subculture of this. There's entire businesses built only around like implementing EOS in other people's businesses. And I only bring that up because at the beginning of that book, like the beginning of so many business books, one of the first things they want you to do is figure out your core values, like the core values of your business. And everyone talks about this differently. It could be values, it could be principles, it could be reasons for being, it could be all these other things. But at the end of the day, I think everyone agrees, or most of these people who write business books agree, that you should have like these guiding principles and these guiding values. But like, how do you know what they are? How do you know what's important? Because whenever I think about the things, like the possible candidates for values and principles, they all sound great. Like, how do you know which one you shouldn't do? Because a lot of times they're just vague, and they'll give examples in the book like, be kind to people. Okay, that sounds good. Let's be kind to people. We win. Yeah, no one wants to lose. So yeah, let's do that one too. And then they'll have like self-driven. Yeah. Like, I don't want anybody on my team who's not self-driven. I don't want to have to tell people what to do. Like, I don't think anyone's going to ever pick, be a jerk. And that's your guiding principle, and that's your value, and cheat and steal and lie to get your way. Like, no one believes that. No one thinks that you should do that. So how do you figure out what your actual principles and values and whatever should be? And I've been doing a lot of thinking on this lately. You know, I always joke that one of the reasons I don't ever want to get a tattoo isn't because I disagree with tattoos. It's because I don't think I could commit to something for that long, like a word or a phrase or a symbol that I could say like, yeah, I want this on my body forever. Like if I had to, if you know, I don't know, there was this weird situation where everyone in the world had to get a tattoo and I had to decide right now what it would say. Like I guess I'd put a cross, you know, I'm a Christian, so I guess I'd do that. But even still, wow. Total tangent there. I don't know that I can commit to say this is the one set of values or the one principle or the one set of principles that I'm going to adhere to for the rest of my life and build my entire business around. I'm just not realizing how messy my desk is for this video. Let me clean up a little bit. Gosh, and the background too. I just did a terrible job of setup today. Anyway, ignore all that. Stick with me for a minute. So I started thinking literally this morning, what if you don't pick your values? What if you don't pick your principles? What if you discover them? And gosh, doesn't that sound like such a fortune cookie? But like just going along those lines, let's pretend that I'm onto something here and that you do actually just discover or pick your values. And actually, I got to tour this company a few months ago and talk to the CEO as part of this group I'm with the Profit First professionals. And it was really cool. And he had just told us that the day before they had done this big team thing where they like told the team what their core values were gonna be. And he said something that really stood out to me. He said, values should not be prescriptive. They shouldn't be something that you're trying to attain, and they shouldn't be something that you're telling your team, y'all should be this way. Instead, values in his mind should be more reflective. Like, this is who we already are at our best. Like, this is the best qualities about us. And so we're just gonna try to make sure that we are reaching the highest version of that. So, you know, for him and his team, like, he really wanted to have on his team really competitive people who always wanted to win. And so that was one of their values, was we win, because that was something really important to them. And so I guess it's more of also like a filtering mechanism to say like, they're not going to hire people who don't have that competitive spirit. And there were other ones too that were equally important. But then again, like it brought me back to like, well, I don't know. I feel like there's good things in everybody. And if we just say like, let's list all the good things, then is it a meaningful list anymore? So going back along the lines of, do you just discover your values? And I don't know if this is the right way to do it, but one of the things I started thinking of was, okay, what if maybe we think about the things that are important to us, or the things that we tend to make decisions towards? But then here's where I get into trouble. I like being comfortable. I don't mean like financially comfortable. Of course, everyone wants to be financially comfortable. I mean like physically comfortable. In the morning, the last thing I want to do when the alarm goes off is turn off the box fan and turn on the lights and get out of bed. So if I am not being intentional about my mornings and torturing myself in the morning the way all these books tell you you're supposed to, then my mornings look like me stumbling to the coffee pot that's already started and everything, pouring a cup of coffee, telling Jessica good morning, and then retreating back into the cold, dark bedroom, hiding under the sheets, and then just like only emerging just to get another sip of coffee. And I know that like that doesn't make for the most productive day, and in the days that like I can take myself out of bed and actually do something productive first thing in the morning, I have a much better day. But I'm sharing it because if I'm gonna think about the things that I default towards and whether or not that that reflects my values, then does that mean I value comfort? And I don't see a direction or a path where that becomes anything helpful at all, because I know for myself, like the most growth, and I think the only growth I've ever had, has come from discomfort and being okay with being uncomfortable. And this was top of mind this morning because I fully intended when I got my coffee this morning to just climb back into bed and have another lazy morning like that, a very unproductive, very comfortable morning. So I got my cup of coffee and I go into the sunroom and I tell Jessica good morning, and the dog is following me and the dog goes to the back door to go outside. And I say to myself, okay, let me just let the dog outside and drink a little bit of coffee while the dog's doing its thing. So I go outside and immediately think, this isn't so bad. Not too hot, not too cold. I'm going to sit outside and drink my coffee. And then I'll go back and escape into the bedroom and go back into bed where it's nice and cold and quiet. But I'll be doggone if while I was sitting with my coffee outside, I just started thinking about things and started remembering how much I enjoy taking walks in the morning and how it's been so long since I've taken a morning walk. And so the next thing I know, I finish my cup of coffee and I'm putting my shoes on and I'm taking a 20-minute walk. I ended up walking a mile this morning. It was where the idea for this video actually came from, because I started thinking about like, what happened? How did I get here? I didn't want to do this. I wanted to be in bed in the dark, in the cold, like under the covers. And now I'm walking in the Louisiana humidity for 20 minutes. Like what happened? How did I accidentally get into this walk? Now, total side note, away from values at all, I started thinking about like, man, anybody who's ever read Atomic Habits would say, oh, well, look, you just need to like rebuild this into a set of steps of don't have your coffee in bed, have your coffee out on the patio. And then from the patio, you get your shoes on. And then after you get your shoes on, you go take a walk. But I know me, and I know if I try to set up a set of events with the goal of ending in a walk, I'm not going to start this set of events. In fact, if I have any inkling that if I go sit outside and drink my coffee, then I'm going to end up walking, I'm not going to sit outside and drink my coffee. I'm going to stay in bed. So I feel like I almost need to trick myself into saying like, no. I'm not taking a walk this morning. I'm just going to go drink my coffee outside while the dog's doing its business. And then as soon as the dog is done, I'm immediately going to go back inside and get in bed. I think if I did that, then I would actually end up taking the walk if I could convince myself that I wasn't going to be doing the walk. I don't know if that makes sense, or I don't know like what kind of terrible person I am that I can't even commit to like going outside on a beautiful morning and taking a walk, but that's what it is. And so that's why I have a hard time thinking like, oh, what things are you predisposed to doing to come up with my values? Because if that was the case, then like my values would be staying in bed and drinking coffee in the cold, dark room. So all that said, I can share with you the core values and vision that I had come up with for North CPA, a few years ago, several years ago. I think I might have done this before I even had a team. And I think they're still relevant today. I shared them with the team the other day and did a little video for them. And everyone kind of agrees that they still think that these are relevant. But it's funny, like we tend to not emphasize the things that already exist. Like I've done these already. I've done the core values. But when I think about them, it's like, do they get me excited? Or should I redo them? But then if I do redo them, am I going to be redoing them just for the purpose of having new values? Or should I just hold on to the things that made sense before? So the vision that I had put down was, the vision is to create a company that allows me and my employees and my clients to fit work in around their lives instead of their lives around work. So this is really important to me, because if it's only about like financial security, then I would have just kept working at the bank. I was making good money, working 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Like it was a typical job and we were fine financially. And in the beginning, I certainly didn't leave the bank to make more money than I was making. I left the bank to be able to have that freedom of time, to be able to spend time doing what I want to do, to be able to like step away from my desk and go do whatever with the kids or go visit with Jessica or take off early without having to ask permission. So it's been really important for me to build the business in a way that doesn't commit us to anything that takes away from that, if that makes sense. Like, we won't run payroll for a client if that payroll has to be done hourly. Like, if there's hourly things that go into payroll and it has to be done on a set schedule, we won't do it. We'll help manage payroll if it can be set on auto payroll, because I don't want to have to make sure that like there's always somebody available who can put in the hours at a certain time and press pay. And so we try to do things in a way that we can do them on our time so that then the clients can then benefit on their time. Going down the list, I also put down like what we do. We help people understand their finances so that they can make better decisions. And then I put down just the word communication, because I keep coming back to the fact that like the one thing that we can do better than anybody else is communicate. We can make sure that our emails are going out quickly, that we're responding to emails, that we're responding to client messages, that we're communicating with the results of things, that we're explaining things, and the way that we communicate and how often we communicate, I think sets us apart from other CPAs. But then on the core values, I came up with 4 core values. We're kind, and we work with kind people. We're self-motivated. So those are already 2 that I made fun of at the beginning of the video. We're good at what we do, and we do what we're good at. This one was important to me, and I want to go through this in just a second. And we're always improving. This one, I feel like, I don't know. I kind of feel like this was an afterthought. I might end up scratching that one at some point, but for now it stays. So going back through the list, we're kind and we work with kind people. And like, what does that mean? It means we're honest with ourselves, with each other, and with our clients. And sometimes that honesty is difficult and feels mean, but it's actually the kindest thing that we can do. Like, I have to be very honest about my team's performance and where things might need improvement. Otherwise, like, that's not being kind, even though in the moment, like, that's not normally how I like to do things. But it means we're considerate and we're respectful, and we do not work with jerks. Like, we have a very strict no jerk policy. And as soon as something starts feeling abrasive, we kind of take a step back and think like, is this a good fit or is this warranted? The second one, we're self-motivated. This one's really important to me because I don't want to have to say, Ben, now today you have to do this. And Nicole, today you need to work on that. My team is amazing for this. They do a great job of just doing things without having to be asked and really taking ownership of the work. And again, like for me too, I don't want clients to have to say, hey, where's this now? How come this hasn't happened yet? Like, we need to be able to start and do things and finish things without having to be asked to do it. So that one's really important. The third one, we're good at what we do and we do what we're good at. I almost feel like I should switch that around, because this one is important to me in that I want to make sure that we're never saying yes to something that we're not qualified to say yes to. In the accounting world, you do have like the traditional way you run a CPA firm is you're basically just a generalist. We can generally do mostly anything for any business. We can do your taxes. We can do your bookkeeping. We can do this type of consulting project. We can run your payroll. We can do all these things, but basically at a kind of any way that we could do it for anybody, we can do it for you. And then you have specialists where you can say like, we're the accountant for construction contractors. And so anything you need with work in process inventory and job costing and all these things we can do for you. And we can do all these other things that we can do for anybody. So as a very small firm with me and just a few team members, it's really important for me to be able to say no to the right things if they're not things that we're comfortable doing, because they're just not things that we're great at. And that means being really honest about the things that we are good at and pushing that, and being able to say no whenever something comes up that might be a great opportunity, but we're just not the best fit for. And it's difficult for me sometimes because we might have a client that in every other area we're the best fit, but then for this one specific thing that they need, we're just not the right option for them. And it's hard to be able to say like, no, we can't do that for you, because then I get afraid that maybe we'll lose the entire relationship because of this one thing. And so I put this core value in place because it was almost a safeguard for myself to be able to know that like, we're only going to say yes to the things that we're going to be able to do very, very well, which means having to say no whenever something comes up that, again, may be a great opportunity for us, might be a good opportunity for the client, but that fit just isn't there sometimes. With us leaning into the author space and specializing with authors, it almost makes it easier to use that filter, because then we can say, okay, is this something that we're being asked to do? Is this something that could benefit most authors? Or is this a very, very niche situation that is very specific to this client? And then we can make that decision on if it's worth actually leaning into that and learning it, or if it's something that we should refer out and just say, no, that's really not what we do. And the last one, we're always improving. I put this in there because I really wanted to build a team of people who were learners. learners. I wanted to build a team of people who were interested in learning new things and learning new ways of doing things. This was almost a filtering mechanism for me because I was constantly changing software or things or processes, and I really wanted a team that could adapt to that. So I do think that that is important, but it may be just more of a filtering of like, hey, this is a business that like we might adopt the new software this year and then change it next year. And so you need to be okay with learning new things. I also think that maybe this one came from because I was leaving the bank at the time. And there was a lot of things at the bank where it was like, well, we do it this way just because that's the way we've always done it. And when you try and implement change in that kind of culture, then it's difficult to get people interested in learning a new way of doing things. And so maybe that was more reactionary, and that would be one that maybe I would get rid of, but definitely keeping we are kind, we are self-motivated, and we do what we're good at. So I don't know, maybe we do have values. Maybe I do know how to set values. I think maybe just personally, it's difficult for me to wrap my head around like, what are my principles and my guiding principles and my core beliefs and my reasons for being and whatever other term you want to put on it. So I'm curious to hear from you, how do you do this? Like, have you gone through the process of figuring out your values and your principles and what they are? How do you weed out the ones that are really good, but you just can't have all of them in your list because then they're meaningless? I kind of tend to believe that maybe we all have core values and principles, and maybe like those are just the things that help us make the decisions. But where I'm having issue is, what if those aren't good values? Like, what if I avoid confrontation because I just want everyone to be happy? But that's not necessarily a good value to have. Like, total peace and harmony with no confrontation is not a good way to be. So how would I translate something like that into a value if that is how I operate sometimes? Anyway, I think I've rambled enough. I think I've belabored this too much probably at this point. So I'm just curious to know like what your thoughts are on this. How do you pick the values that are good values, and how do you weed out the ones that are good values but maybe just not important to you at the time? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you next time.